What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Galaxy Note 10 Plus in this late 2023. Been getting a lot of questions about this device. It's been like 5 months since we revisited this device. So this phone, it actually got its last security patch for August. So that was it, and Samsung cut support for this phone officially. So that was the last security patch. And I'm getting questions, should you still buy the phone? If you don't already have the phone, I would honestly just hold it until the Galaxy S24 or even 25, because as we're gonna see, this phone is still really good, and I wouldn't be in a rush to upgrade it. Of course, unless you really want to, right? But yeah, so if you do want a Note style phone for relatively cheap, I would recommend getting the Note 20 Ultra. It's basically it's got a lot of the same similar things. It's still got the SD card support. You get 120 hertz on this one, and essentially kind of the same phone, just with some slightly improved specs when it comes to cameras and stuff like that. So I have a comparison on that, so check that out. But yeah, so if you do have one, I would just hold out. I wouldn't be in a rush to upgrade. See what the S24 Ultra is looking like, and then if that's not impressive, I would even hold it for until the S25. As you can see, the Galaxy, you can find the cheapest in pretty good condition around $240. But like I said, if you add an extra $50, $100, you get the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, which is still getting software updates. Alright, so let's just go ahead and revisit this phone, because I think this, in my opinion, is one of Samsung's best phones of all time. It's a really aged extremely well, even though it's not getting security patches. So what's interesting here is that the design still looks absolutely fantastic. It still carries the same boxy sort of design that Samsung is currently using in phones like the Galaxy S23 Ultra. You can see the only real difference here is the actual camera bump on here, or the cameras are just really big now. But you can see still pretty much the same design. Even if you go down, you can see. So Samsung has not really moved away from this sort of design. This was the design that they really liked. What's crazy is that this is such a pretty much dramatic design improvement coming from the Note 9, actually, as far as the back of the phone goes, and as far as the front of the phone goes. It was a pretty big improvement, in my opinion, coming from the Note 9 to the Note 10 Plus. So this was just a futuristic design at the time, and if we just turn on the screen on both these devices, you see, just see how close they look in terms of resemblance. Yeah, it still looks very modern from the front, which is something that is really nice. Like, if you look at a 2019 iPhone and compare it to the iPhones now, you would see a dramatic difference. But with this phone, you don't really see that big of a difference. I guess the screen specs are different, but it's still a very good design, in my opinion. Now, looking at the actual screen here, it's still a very good screen. So it's a dynamic AMOLED display. It's HDR10 Plus at 6.8 inches. It's a full 1440p display, and it's $498 for the PPI. And you have these really thin bezels on here as well too, which is really nice. And it really doesn't look, like I said, that much different from the Galaxy S23 Ultra here. Now it does have a curved screen on here, which Samsung is slowly getting away from. Apparently they're going to completely get away from it with the S24. But it still gives the phone like a really nice premium look and feel. I've always been a fan of the curved displays. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I think the screen still looks really nice. Now, I will say probably the only thing that makes the screen probably feel a little bit dated is the lack of 120 hertz or 90 hertz or anything like that. Now, it's still a pretty smooth panel for 60 hertz for sure. So that's not a huge deal. I mean, Apple's still putting 60 hertz in their phones. So it still feels, pretty smooth, and I think it still looks really great too. And yeah, the newer phones are much brighter as well. But like I said, if we look at it, just head on, it's still a pretty nice looking display. Now, what's more impressive with the Note 10 Plus is that it's actually still able to play games very well. This phone has the Snapdragon 855. Its last major OS update was Android 12, One UI 4, and then it got the micro SD card support and 256 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. the phone still is able to play games really well. And like I said, the screen on here is beautiful. So the gaming experience surprisingly is still really good. We're able to play PUBG at HDR Extreme here. And we can even go up to Ultra HD on here. I have to download it, but it's still a pretty fast phone for the most part. I'm actually pretty impressed with this phone, you know, being a 2019 phone and being able to play games. And it's not just PUBG, it's pretty much any game that I've thrown at it, except for like Fortnite. It doesn't play as well on this phone anymore, but Call of Duty plays pretty well. Pretty much a lot of games that you throw at this phone, it's still going to play really well, especially at this price point. It still will do better than most $200 phones that you will find, for the most part. So I'm actually pretty impressed with this phone still being able to just play games really well. So yeah, so that's a bit surprising for me, and I'll show you guys the Geekbench scores. Here's the Geekbench scores. If you want to compare it to a device you have, then this is what you will get. So yeah, I still think this phone is still blazing fast when it comes to speed. Now, as far as all the additional features, this phone still has the S Pen, and of course it's still going to feel really smooth, so there's actually no issue. Now, you can feel like a slight difference between this one and the S23. The latency is actually extremely low on the S23, but if you're just somebody that's just using this phone to navigate with, it's still really smooth. I've actually seen people do digital artwork with these phones as well too, which I've always thought was impressive. I see them on YouTube all the time, and pretty much still, and this is what I was trying to tell people, there's not like big massive improvements when it comes to like Android. It takes like a lot of years to be able to, for them to throw in like features that are like, you know, really good, right? Because if we look, this is running Android 12. It has Samsung desktop support, Dolby Atmos, reverse wireless power share. It still has basically everything that is in the S23. So there's like no big, and then you also can use Good Lock on here as well too. So it's not like, as far as the software experience, you're missing out on anything. This phone also has stereo speakers. Pretty good sound in speakers. You get a pretty good amount of bass on here as well too. I thought one of the strange things with the hardware on here is that the power button is on the left hand side, which I always thought was weird. So you have to unlock the phone kind of with your left hand, which is always, I thought was kind of strange. But yeah, the fingerprint scanner is the ultrasonic one, and it works really well, so I don't have any issues with this. And then you also can take advantage of face unlock as well too. Alright, so let's talk about the cameras on here. You have a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto that does 2x optical, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide, has 0.3 depth sensor with 4K 60 video. Then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. The cameras on the Note 10 Plus still takes pretty good photos in direct sunlight, but if you take it out of direct sunlight, pretty much any low light scenario, you will get like a softer photo for sure. Video is still somewhat pretty decent. Like I said, this phone actually still does a fantastic job in direct sunlight. But yeah, so I think like the biggest improvements that they've made with cameras really is that, you know, the low light is much better in the newer phones. And also this phone lacks like the crazy zooming capabilities of a lot of the newer phones as well too. But I can't really complain about the photos on here. As far as like still photography, if you're just outdoors, you're at the park or at an amusement park or just whatever, if you're in any type of good lighting scenario, this phone is still going to take a great shot. The selfie cam can also be a little bit you know, soft again if you're not in good lighting, but for the most part the camera is still pretty decent. Now also, probably one of the problems you'll run into with a lot of older flagships is probably battery life. Now for a light user like me, surprisingly I can still squeeze almost 6 hours of screen on time out of this phone. If you're a heavy user, you're definitely gonna have to charge this phone because it is a much older phone. So, you know, with older flagships, sometimes you have to replace the battery in them. You also have a 4300 milliamp hour battery. This one has 45 watts, so it actually charges pretty fast. And then you have the wireless and reverse wireless charging on here as well too. Overall, this is a fantastic phone. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with this phone besides it's not getting security patches. It still plays games well. It still takes photos pretty well. The design on here is great. You have SD card support. Screen on here is great. There's a lot to like with the Note 10 Plus. That's why it's one of my favorite devices. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.